are you?
Welcome. Hi, welcome. Yes. You look a lot younger than you did just a few minutes ago. You've gotten some work done since the finale. Hi, everyone. How are you? Isn't that episode just amazing and sane and like hard to describe? I'm Stacey Wilson-Hunt from New York Magazine and Vulture. Very happy to be here. Honored to speak to this gentleman about the amazing work that he did in the series, but also in his career. So let's just get right to it so we don't waste any time. And he dressed according to the matching the microphone.
I wanted to match the SAG-AFTRA
official
stuff.
SAG Foundation colors. So you come from a very interesting literary family, artistic family.
Yeah.
Who or what was your earliest artistic influence that you remember you saw someone perform or write something and you thought, wow, I feel like I could do this someday?
Oh, God, I'm going to forget the name of the play. I never thought I could see anyone who, I wasn't a big reader, and so I didn't, I have a cold, by the way, so that's why I sound horrible.
As I said backstage,
Thanks,
he spent a lot of time in water, underwater.
I'm getting drowned.
He's getting over it.
I kind of remember a couple of the first, I can't remember the name of the play. I saw a play in London when I was young that it was the first time I had that experience of like being transported, like going somewhere else and going like, and not being in my seat and seeing a performance. I can't, of course, remember the name of the wonderful actress who did it.
You were a little kid?
No, I was like, I want to say like 18, 19 or something like that. I was going to school over there. And yeah, but I mean, I think it's usually, for me, it's a culmination of, different things that I pursued, not necessarily acting or writing or movies or, it could be music, just things that had, an import. I think everyone has that moment where they sort of realize that there's something bigger out there that you're like, oh, there's something like really cool happening. And that could be like the music scene, or that could be, I remember actually David Lynch, when I went and mistakenly bought a ticket to Blue Velvet, thinking it was like, I remember seeing the poster and going like, oh, this looks like Dirty Dancing or something, and bought the poster with Kyle MacLachlan. And
very different movie.
Yeah, and I remember literally just walking out shook, like, whoa, that was like the most insane thing, but that was amazing, and I don't know why I feel this way. And
well, it's
really
also counter-programming to what else was out at the time. I mean, there really weren't that many movies like that in theaters.
But I hadn't seen Eraserhead. I hadn't, I had no clue who David was. I'd never seen a movie like that. I didn't know what it was doing to me, but it was deeply affecting. And I remember thinking like, wow, that's something I want to sort of move towards. I didn't know how. I didn't know if I was going to be an actor at that point, obviously, or anything like that.
And you would end up working with him twice.
Weirdly, yeah. I know.
That was meant to be.
Coinky-dinks.
And did you actually get acting training formally in school or with a teacher?
I did 4 years of acting school, which I think was smart to do.
And what did you learn about yourself in acting school? A lot of people put a lot of value on it. A lot of people come out and say, you shouldn't be confined to those lessons.
I put a lot of value in it because it taught me technique, so, you don't get to choose what you do for the most part. I mean, when you get out of acting school, it's like you're going to a lot of Colgate commercials and, and terrible soap opera. You're just trying to get something where you get to say something, to someone, to anyone who will listen.
You guys know what that's like, right?
Yeah,
you just want to talk to someone on screen, right?
And I remember thinking like, and I remember having a very good acting teacher, Peter Hedges, who said, look, when you get out of here, you're not going to, you kind of got to learn this like you're a plumber, you know what I mean? So it's better to sort of
like
learn
a trade.
It's not this like, it is to a certain extent a deeply personal thing and experience. And I remember he was like my aha teacher, and I was sitting there doing a monologue or scene with someone and kind of mumbling, and I had a lot of emotion going on and blah, blah, blah. And the scene ended, and he was like, that was great. I don't doubt you were feeling all that, and that was great. But your job is to fucking communicate that to everyone else, who's in the audience. And I thought like, oh yeah, there's a technique involved where if I'm speaking to you back there, then it has to go to you, and if it's speaking to you up there or wherever the camera is. And it was an aha moment where I was like, oh, yeah, this is not just feeling stuff. This isn't, it's not therapy, So I have to actually,
right.
Project that and service the writer and
Make
the director.
Connection.
Yeah,
right.
I'm not servicing myself. I'm servicing the material.
Right. And what was your first SAG job?
Oh, I was so pissed. I got. I want to say it was like a one line on like New York Undercover or something, like one of those kind of like, let's go get them cop shows. And it was a thing where it was like early 90s, and they had this thing where like they were like, oh, we're taking non-SAG actors. And the SAG rep showed up to the set and was like, yeah, you got to join now. And I was like, this is like the mob. So like I had to find some friends and cobble together. They were like, oh, you got to go home. And I was like, oh. And I think I was working 2 days, and then I called a bunch of friends and got $20 from everybody, and was able to pay but I was like, they shook me down on set. So. True.
That's why we love our guild, right?
I know.
Yeah. I'm not a member of a guild.
Now I have dental and everything. It's great.
I live vicariously through you guys. We don't have guilds. And when you were kind of in the slog of auditioning and trying to break in to get whatever speaking role you could find, did you find yourself being typecast as a certain thing, or did people see you as one thing and you were desperately trying to be another thing? And was it more dramatic roles versus comedy?
No, I came to LA when I was like in the middle of college to just kind of see what it was like here. I was kind of making decisions whether I was going to go to New York or LA, and I got a job PAing at Gracie Films for James L. Brooks, which was super cool. And I remember he kind of like in a kind moment where he wanted to ask me about myself, said like, oh, what do you want to do? And I was like, I'm going to be an actor. And he's like, oh boy. But I said, yeah, I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to go to New York or LA. And he was the one who said, go to New York. He said, the competition's going to be better. And he said, and I'm not sure whether that's true now or whatever, but he said, go to New York, competition. And he said, only come to LA when you're flown here. And I did that, and it kind of worked, because in LA, the other actors that I sort of came up with, and I had auditioned here a couple times, but it felt very supported in New York. We were all rooting for each other, and it didn't feel that way in LA, like that in LA. It felt like there were a lot of people who were like, yeah, they just sort of got off a bus and were like, my mom said I was like great at imitating people, so I'm an actor, and you're like, well, maybe it's more than that, I thought, but I wasn't getting typecast. I mean, I was getting really good experiences, going from, just from table reads of plays to productions, off-Broadway, Broadway, and then gradually started getting some small independent film work, and then eventually came to LA for a number of reasons.
And speaking of David Lynch, I was very curious how you got hired for Mulholland Drive. I feel like that was the first big thing. I mean, I'd seen you in various shows, but that was sort of a star turn, if you will.
That was completely random. I got a call to just go to, like, my agent gave me he didn't audition people. He just, you were supposed to go on tape, and you weren't given sides or material. And it was going to be a TV show at the time. It was a pilot, so I went to ABC in New York and just put myself on tape. And they said, what do you do, and what do you do for fun, and what are you reading, and that kind of stuff. And then it kind of went off into the ether for like a month and a half. And then I got a call from the casting director of Mulholland Drive saying like, oh, David would like to meet you in Los Angeles. I thought, oh, that's cool. And then they said, no, he wants to meet you today. So I went and got on a plane, and I was just grabbed like.
Someone fly you here? Or did you have to fly
flew
yourself?
Me. They flew me.
That's all that matters. Yeah.
The first bunch of jobs were like that, and then went right from the airport. I was supposed to go back to the hotel and kind of clean up, and then he said, no, just go right from the airport. Went and met him at his house, and we just sat around and talked for like 2 hours, and that was it. He was like, yeah, I'd like you to do it. Okay, buddy. And I was like, all right, great. So it was weirdly the easiest job I ever got.
Sounds like a David Lynch movie.
Yeah,
like
it was.
That whole.
Well, I had never seen a picture of him at the time. I didn't know what he looked like. So I was like, oh my God. I was sort of expecting like Marty Feldman to come to the door. And this guy who looks like a fucking Boy Scout shows up, and he's got a little white shirt. And I was like, oh, hey. And I was like, this is so not what I was expecting David Lynch to look like. Yeah.
Do you remember what you talked about? What kind of questions he asked you?
We talked a lot about photography. He was taking a lot of photos at the time, so we were just looking at. He was showing me some of his photos and then some of his paintings, which were amazing. I went to art school, so I was double major drama, visual art. So I was curious. His paintings are incredible, and we just talked for a lot. And then all of a sudden he's like, "Let's read some of the scenes," and we just literally just off the page read some of it. I had never seen the material before, and.
Oh, really? Not until that point?
No, I didn't even seen it. And so,
Did you understand the
sides that he
movie when
gave
you
me.
read it? Because I still don't understand that movie.
No, I had no clue what was happening. I still don't. Not a bright person. But he, yeah, I mean, it was also one of those experiences where we had so much fun making that, and laughed. I mean, he's a funny fucker, and we laughed a lot. And then when me and Naomi went and saw the movie at his house when it was cut, and we couldn't believe it. It was one of those like where the thing you did was totally. It's where you really understand you're working with a master, where the thing you shot is completely different than the thing you saw as far as tone and music and saturation of color and attention to detail, and we just couldn't believe it. I mean, it was so stunning, that movie.
And one of my favorite projects of yours was on 6 Feet Under.
Yeah, thanks.
And what did you learn working with Alan and those incredible writers? And I mean, for me, it was one of the best ensembles of all time. And was it season 3, season 4?
I can't remember what, season 2 or 3,
Okay.
I don't know.
And the show was definitely had momentum, and you were kind of thrown in.
It's
Yeah.
definitely that thing of like
Yeah.
where I was thrown in and didn't know they had all kind of gelled as a cast, and so I was a little bit odd man out. But again, the material was so good that I didn't, most of my stuff was with Rachel Griffiths.
Right. We so wanted Brenda to finally
I know.
just,
Didn't
be
like
normal.
the S&M guy. And so yeah, it was a wonderful working experience, and very casual. It felt like just it's one of those things. It's another one of those projects where sort of it just felt like it was clicking, and the writers. It's always material. Like the material was so good, So as long as you sort of made the faces, it worked.
And did you find yourself at that point getting noticed more by casting people and people coming to you saying, "Hey, I have this thing. I think you'd be perfect for it"?
No, I mean, if anything, living in New York was that thing of, you were kind of out of the consciousness of people. So, you kind of dodged, between the raindrops, or you were sort of under the radar, which I liked at the time, because I was able to do plays and pursue other things that I like to do. So I was never kind of, I wasn't, it sounds strange, but I wasn't very ambitious. Meaning I wasn't lazy. I cared an enormous amount about what I did, but I wasn't ambitious in that way of like, I got to get a pilot, or I got to get a show, or
Maybe the same fervor you would have if you lived here, where there's such a pressure of being in the grind.
Yeah, there's something about living in LA, which when I was younger and more, I guess insecure. Like I didn't want to live, in the coal mining town, because everyone talked about digging the coal, and it happens even now in LA, where everyone's sort of, you're a big stack of quarters, small stack of quarters, medium stack of quarters, and then your stock goes down, and then it goes up, and then, in New York, I never felt that, I just felt like, I'm going to do a play this year, or I'm going to do a small part in a movie so I can do the play, or whatever it is. It was very kind of a more freewheeling.
There's also more going on in New York. Not everyone you meet is an actor.
Yeah,
Not everyone's a Hollywood
that
person.
Coal mining thing. It's not.
Right.
You're not talking about what movies did what this weekend, and who's going to get the Golden Globe. That kind of stuff. It didn't have that feel to it. Even around the Tonys, didn't feel like that. It just kind of was like, so you got another Tony. That's cool.
Right.
There was no campaigning, that kind of thing.
Right. You're kind of sheltered from it a little bit out there, which is nice.
Yeah.
So you've had an equally prolific career as a writer, screenwriter, and you wrote one of the most ridiculously funny movies of all time, Tropic Thunder. I don't know if you guys know that. It's insane. I remember seeing that in the theater and thinking, I cannot believe this movie got made, which is a mark of a great movie. But what was your inspiration for that story, and what was it like to work with Ben and Danny and all those guys?
I actually met Ben, his then girlfriend we were doing Three Sisters on Broadway, and I met Ben. I was a huge fan of his show. He had a canceled show.
Ben Stiller show.
Ben Stiller show, yeah. And could sort of quote it chapter and verse. And we just became friends, and then I would write for him a little bit sometimes when he would come and do like Letterman or Conan, or we'd work out bits together, and we just laughed a lot together. And then he had an idea for a movie, or he's like, I have an idea that I think is really funny. And he pitched it to me and said, like, and originally the idea was that the movie was all took place in L.A. and it was about a bunch of actors who came back from making a war movie, and they all had like actor PTSD, which I thought was funny. And then we tossed around some more, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun if we kind of, and Blair Witch was big at the time, you know, and I was like, wouldn't it be funny if, like, you know, they went to the jungle and fought, and what they thought they were filming was a real war, but they ended up getting into a kind of a real war situation, thinking they were being filmed, and the idea kind of sprung from that. And then we got to just make fun of every actor on the planet, you know, the action star, the over-serious guy, the, you know, like the, you know, and
I've actually thought about, I wonder if the Robert Downey Jr. character could happen today.
I don't think so.
I mean, you watch it and it's super funny, but there'd be so much sensitivity around it now, even though he did such an amazing job. It's clearly satirical.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if that, how people would react now.
We kind of were able to put we did Zoolander 2 together too, and thank you.
Equally ridiculous
Deadpool.
and silly.
But they, you know, we received an enormous amount of flack for that movie before it even came out, because we had a trans character in it, transgender character, and when we were conceiving that character, we were like, yeah, let's, you know, the joke was always like, let's make fun of these completely out of date old white guys, and the modeling world has changed, and there's now the biggest model is a transgender model, you know, like, and they're just completely befuddled by it. And that did not go over well with the trans. Before the movie came out, it didn't. We knew when the movie would come out, people would shrug and go like, "Oh." Well,
you can't really keep a lot of secrets, even when you're in production. People already know what the story is.
You know. Well, we'd cast Benedict Cumberbatch as the character. He was wonderful, and we kind of were just like, "What is the problem with this?" I mean, it's not. We're not making fun of anybody. You know, like we're just, you know. And it's. I think there's a sort of reflexive sensitivity that comes up where, you know. For whatever reason, people feel like, you know, they're somehow being made fun of or indicted when clearly we're all on the same team. You know, like, I mean, I think the same thing with Tropic Thunder. We had that not about Robert's character. Weirdly,
Simple Jack.
We screened the movie. Yeah, Simple Jack. Mm-hmm. Like we screened the movie for many demographics, and the African American demographic loved that character. And just thought it was hilarious that this over-serious white guy would go to the extent of
Australian guy too,
Australian
right?
guy.
They are great at accents.
Darkening his skin, but for our use of the R word is what we got. We had people picketing us, you know, at our premiere, and I remember being really disappointed, being like, you know, what? Like, and
this was before Twitter too. Can you imagine now?
Yeah, it was before Twitter. Yeah. I mean, it was like, but you know, I realized it was like, I think it was one of those things where, as is often the case with comedy or whatever, is that people are trying to, you know, bring attention to their cause, and if they find something that, and sometimes legitimately they find offensive things, and they go, look, you know, this is not cool, but sometimes they're sort of trying to, you know, create bandwidth for their issue, you know, or trying to sort of get something that people will click on that will direct them to them, you know.
Sure. Well, there are a lot of probably classic movies that probably, you know, if we really watch them with a more scrutiny, there'd be moments that...
Yeah. I mean, I had an interesting talk with Mel Brooks once about that. We were talking about it because he made Blazing Saddles, which you definitely couldn't make today.
Yeah.
And
that's actually a perfect example.
And we were just talking about comedy and like, you know, the culture of outrage, you know, when people get offended by things, but they're not really offended. Really, I don't think sometimes, and of course I'm a white guy saying this, and but you kind of go like, look, you know, as long as the target of your joke and your aim is true for who you're making fun of, you know, we were never making fun of mentally challenged people. We were making fun of fucking dumb Hollywood actors. You know, that was the joke landed squarely on them, you know, and it gets frustrating because you're like, look, you know, I wish you're purposefully, and when you have to explain comedy, and you're like,
then when you've had to explain it, it's not funny anymore.
Oh, fuck it, you know, like, so
it's exhausting. Yeah, it's exhausting.
It's like being in court and having someone read a joke back to you. You know, like when you're on the witness stand, it's like, well, it doesn't sound funny in the courtroom. It sounds funnier in the. Yeah.
Once you start to pick it apart.
Yeah, exactly.
So the complete opposite of comedy, The Leftovers.
Hilarious.
Actually, there are a lot of funny moments in The Leftovers, but more in the absurdist side of funny. What was your first reaction when you read the pilot? And had you read the book? I know the book hadn't even actually come out yet when HBO optioned it. So did you have awareness of the story?
I did not have awareness of the story. And I didn't read the book because when Damon gave me the script, he said, you know, the character is very different from in the book. So I didn't want to read the book initially because I was like, I got to find and establish the character. and apparently reading the book would not have helped that. So I had to use just what I considered my source material, which is what we were going to have to do, which was the pilot. And I loved it. I mean, it was a really quick, interesting. Damon's a wonderful writer just on the page. Like, I mean, he obviously is wonderful on the screen too. But I hope he publishes his scripts sometime because they're really energetic and dense and great. And read they're page turners, you know. So I read it, loved it, and committed to it. I mean, it's a slightly longer story than that, but that was the gist of it.
And I talked to you a couple of years ago. We did a group interview, and you had talked about experiences that you had had on network shows, and you had this quote, which I like, talking about being on a 24-episode network drama. You start cycling through your bag of tricks so much that you start to fall into bad habits as an actor, which I think is really interesting. In what way did this show allow you to never fall into that trap?
Again, it goes back to the writing, which is, you know, when you're doing 23 or 24 episodes a year of a drama, it's a crushing schedule. Dramas in and of them, hour-long drama is a hard schedule. But when you're doing 24, the writers inevitably get backed up, and they can't produce quality at that scale, you know, for an extended period of time. And we've all seen shows, you know, you think like, oh, this is a great first season, and then if it's that sort of 24-hour network stuff, and then eventually the writers will fall into bad habits, and you start to see the patterns of the writers and their speech patterns, and you gotta go like, oh, that's not great, and then and so that inevitably trickles down on the actors, and you're also working at such a pace, and you're so exhausted that you're just going like, oh, I'll just do that thing I do where I kind of cock my head and go, all right, and you leave because it's easier, and I'm exhausted, and the material's starting to suck anyway, and but Damon, you know, we had long breaks in between each season. He really bit down hard on the material. You know, I knew every time I got a script that so much blood had been spilt on it that I wasn't going to be disappointed, or I wasn't going to try and change anything. And also, the arc of my character was so zigzagged. I was never allowed to sort of put it in neutral or coast, or, you know, because if I did, I would just I'd fail his scripts, you know, and that was true for everyone. Every character had a really interesting arc, you know. So he never allowed us to get comfortable. The writing just demanded that everyone kind of keep digging deeper.
And what specifically did you bring from your own life or from yourself to Kevin, and what similarities did you see with him and you? God,
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's things that, you know, people who knew me would notice. I tried to, you know, make him as, you know, I'm not as depressed as him.
Few people are. He's pretty depressed.
He's pretty depressed. No, I don't know. I mean, you know, I don't know what I brought. I mean, I guess personal experiences, or, you know, things that in scenes where you'd have to act certain ways. You know, you inevitably use a kind of a recall or your own experiences in life to, you know, sort of put it through that aperture to give it to everyone else, you know. So
you have to cry a lot on the show. So many tears.
Lots of tears.
I mean, how are you able to do that take after take? You know,
that actually kind of goes back to technique, which I think is another good reason to go to train, which is there's techniques you can develop, you know, because it's not. We'd all love to believe that every time you have to do an emotional scene, some people, by the way, have complete access to that, and can be sitting here talking to you, and all of a sudden, just like they can turn on one eye, you know. Just, I'm not that way. Like I kind of had to find the zone or whatever, and so. But again, it was technique, you know. So I won't get into it. It's kind of boring, but, you know, like it's training that I think helps you do that. And sometimes it wouldn't happen, and that was not happening in that scene, you know.
Right. Or
sometimes it would happen, and then they'd cut that. They'd use the one where I'm dry or whatever.
And how would you, when you weren't working on the show, kind of separate yourself from the character? This must have been a lot of tough material to sort of, you know, take home at night, or, you know, how are you trying to create a buffer between you and this work? Because
I don't really, I'm not terribly method, or I'm not like the guy who like brings it home and I'm like, don't talk to me right now. I'm still thinking about
You're not Daniel Day-Lewis.
Intense day. Really blew some minds.
I mean, you did write Tropic Thunder, so I guess this makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not gonna wear Kevin's shoes all weekend. You know, I'm like, you know, look for Kevin's hat in the prop room. But I think I just, I think I would, in a weird way, because the material is so heavy, it became very cathartic. Like, so you'd kind of leave, if you have a big heavy scene and you get it out of the way, you'd kind of leave feeling, or at least I would, like kind of happier, like, whew, glad that's out of the way. And then I'd want to go and have fun and laugh and goof around, so it wasn't hard to, I didn't bring it home. And also maybe as a writer, I really was always looking at the overall piece, I think, if I brought anything from my writing life, and really knowing, kind of being able to see, I think sometimes actors, or at least things that I've written, I can see that actors will try and bring the material to them, and to their bag of tricks and go like, what, it'd be kind of more like this, and this is more interesting. And actors should internalize and process some of the stuff that they do. That's part of your job, but sometimes you can just constantly be bringing the material. So I was always trying to go towards the material as opposed to bringing it into what I wanted to do. And I think Damon would eventually start, as he discovered our characters and what we were all doing, he would then start writing to our strengths, weaknesses, and trying to get us, out of our comfort zones.
And is there a storyline or a scene or a day of shooting where you think back on what you did and then you see the final product and you're like, I cannot believe we got away with this. Cannot believe, like I talked to Damon recently about the Perfect Strangers thing, which is seriously one of the weirdest mashups of pop culture references. I mean, they use the Perfect Strangers theme song as in the opening credits. I'm just like, how? How are you getting this approved?
I don't know.
But is there something that you actually had to do as a performer where you're just like, I can't, like the scene with you on the bed and the plastic bag, like all these things, they're so...
That was the first day of that season. The first scene, first day of that season.
God.
Like when I was looking at the call sheet, I was like, what's the first scene? I was like, oh, it's me putting a fucking bag on my head? It's like 6 a.m. and I was like, seriously? Like,
was that a very scary thing to shoot?
No, it actually wasn't that scary. It's a plastic bag. You just tear it like that, you're fine.
Okay.
No, it was, it wasn't that, it really wasn't that. The only tough stuff was like water, like the drowning
seesaw
stuff.
thing?
The seesaw thing.
Looked miserable.
The guy who did it at the beginning of the season, the other Kevin that got killed doing it, like he was throwing up, and I was almost throwing up. I was just, and then also in the second season, international, like in the bathtub. You're essentially getting waterboarded. It was very uncomfortable. You can't tell in like second season, like a lot of, we were shooting in like 110. This sounds like so boring and we're bitching about it, but
you're not complaining. You're just sharing.
110 degree heat, and it was really fucking hot. Wintertime in New York, really cold. It was just discomfort, but all the big risks Damon took, doing some of the things he did with some of those episodes, that's not me, or that's Tom and Damon and all the writers, they were taking big swings.
And how did it feel to watch the finale for the first time?
It was so, it was real confusing because it was, I knew what we did, obviously, and I actually watched it in New York. I got a copy of it a week before it came. I watched it with Dowd. We watched the last 2 episodes together. So there was a lot of just sort of weepiness, just because we love each other very much, and so it was sort of hard to. It was kind of the first time it was like, oh, we're really done,
Right.
because I knew we were wrap shooting, and that was sad. But we're still going to get to watch all of the other. I was going to get to see everyone else's work, premiere, promotion, all that. Right. And I was I'd watch it weekly when it would come, and get to admire everyone else's work for stuff that I wasn't there for. And so that was the moment it kind of became real. So it was hard to watch it, but not like the end of the world.
And what do you think we learned from the finale? What did you take away from it?
First of all, I thought it was kind of brilliant storytelling, purely on the, oh my God, you have this kind of, enormous freighter ship of ideas and themes and characters, and the way he sort of parked it all on the head of a pin by the end, I thought was pretty impressive. And that's all our directors and writers again, and Carrie, and but I just thought I liked the way that he brought it, and if you look at all 3 seasons, we end each season kind of in the same way. We've kind of it's the same house but different shutters. It always, for Damon at least, and I think it was important to him, it always came back to family, love, a place in the world. And that moment, So the first season, it's me coming back with my daughter, my dog, and finding a baby on my porch, and Nora saying, look what I found. And then the second season is, you know, me coming back home after an earthquake, getting shot, blah, 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 and her saying, you're home,
Right.
you know, and then third season, you know,
Wow.
you know, I'm here, you know.
So home is the recurring theme.
Yeah,
it seems.
or family, I guess.
Good themes. Good foundation for storytelling.
Yeah.
So we have some great audience questions about the show. Want to make sure we get to all of them. So this is from Tom. Tom says, you played aged so well in the finale. How did you approach and prep for that?
I was exhausted. Great makeup artists who worked on us.
I liked how it was very subtle. I
Very
always hate that
subtle.
like overly done. Like
I know.
J.
I thought we were going to be
Edgar,
like
you know,
Benjamin
makeup.
Buttonsing when I first heard the idea. I was like, oh no. It's like we're going to do that horrible, like we're just be fighting through makeup. But Damon was like, no, it's only like 12 or 15, maybe 20 years. So it was a very kind of whatever. I had some help, which was the script indicated that I was like a lighter guy. Like I'm not the old Kevin. Something's changed about him. There were all these sort of descriptives in the thing. So a lot of it was just and it felt odd playing it, you know, the scene where he's at the door and he's kind of lying to her and going, you know, oh, you know, I was just down the road and I happened to see you here. And you know, it ties back into the 7th episode where he sort of kills his shadow self and is probably open to love and become a more gentle person. I think that happens with age anyway. So I think it was really just, again, the writing was the thing that instructed me on how to play the thing, and then the makeup really helped.
And how did it feel to see yourself as an older version of yourself?
Fine. I thought it was kind of cool. It was wild. It was weird when me and Carrie first saw each other for the first time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Looked at each other like, oh, this is adorable.
But maybe like a comfort, like, oh, this isn't going to be too bad.
Exactly.
If I can just stay this attractive until then, everything will be fine. So this is from Curtis. Curtis would like to know if you can offer any insights about how you and Scott Glenn performed such a gloriously dysfunctional father-son relationship. He was so incredible.
Well, I have a gloriously dysfunctional father. No. I don't know. I mean, it sounds like I keep deflecting to the writing, but you know, that's the way it was written. You know, like, and Scott's a big bag of mixed nuts, and he's in the best way, and he just, you know, he always has a weird take on things, and he's always kind of going left and right when you're, you know, in scenes and you're kind of trying to follow him, but he's also incredibly tender and sweet as a man, you know, and it was kind of nice to have, you know, I mean, I guess that we've seen that before with father-son relationships in films and TV shows, but again, put through the Damon's prism, you know, there was just something. I love Scott Glenn, you know, so there was something very easy about his acting style to play off of. And
did you improv at all at any time during the show?
Never.
Okay.
Never.
Okay. Well, the writing's great, so you didn't need to.
Yeah.
This is from Nina and Megan. Did the writers know and did the actors know where the quote-unquote departed had gone?
No. And Tom Perrotta, who wrote the book, actually has the most interesting or I should say Damon has the most interesting anecdote about Tom, which was when he was like, all right, we're doing this show, you know, we're going to get asked, you know, where these 2% went, but between you and me, Tom, where did they go? And Tom goes, honestly, I've never even thought about it. And which is telling.
He wasn't deflecting. He really
hadn't thought about it. And Damon was like, well, there's going to be a certain obligation just in the, like, you know, so we have to figure out what our angle is, you know.
Right.
So they kind of came out of the gate going, we're never going to say, you know, when we were doing the first round of press for the first season, you know, it was like, just stop thinking about that. That's not going to happen. It was my first question when I read the script, like, oh, where do they go? You know, like, we're never going to answer that. So, and really, I think, you know, speaking more largely to that point, which is, you know, it's a metaphor for when people die, you know, or when, you know, I'm assuming we've all lost someone we love or an animal or, you know, and there is that kind of haunting, just like, where are you? Right. What happened to you? Like you were there a second ago, especially if it's sudden.
Especially the scenes of Nora and her kitchen table. We always see her thinking about where her sons and her husband were sitting, and
Yeah.
I'm sure
And
we
it's
could all have
maddening.
flashes.
So we form these kind of belief systems around, okay, well, there's a heaven, so clearly they're there, and I'm going to see them when I go, or, if it's our pet, there's a rainbow bridge, and they're going to come bounding across it at me, when I die.
Right.
And that's what forms these belief systems. So the 2% is really a metaphor for just loss in our own lives, and we've just, they've just sort of put it on steroids and said, like, that's going to be the first 30 seconds of our show. And that's the reality. And people are going to spin out the same way. People watching it are going to spin out and go like, wait, I need to know what happened. Well, that's exactly what's happening in our show. People need to know what's happening.
Right. I always found that because season 1 was in New York, it had like a 9/11 allegory element to it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because there were, American flags, and your character was sort of like this like kind of patriotic guy. I just sort of went there, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I think Tom wrote it after 9/11, and that was it was not his response to 9/11, but it was that was definitely on his mind, And then when we shot the pilot, the Newtown massacre had just happened, which is right close by to fictional Mapleton in Connecticut, and that was something that was on our minds a lot, which is that there's just those parents and the grief that they went through, having dropped off kids 2 hours earlier and having 20 of them gunned down.
Sadly, there's so many points of reference for this, for that departedness.
Human condition.
This is from Justin, another Justin.
Oh, good name.
Very good name. This is sort of a long question. I'll try to make it quick. Kevin has a very interesting arc over the course of the show. In the first season, we are introduced to how flawed he is very early on. Then by the end of the show, he's viewed as a messiah. You know what this is like, Justin. This is like your life, right? What was your approach to playing this? And do you think at any point Kevin begins to believe Matt and his friends about who he is?
I don't think he ever believed it. I think, the couple of the conversations I had with Damon were, is Kevin religious? And that was very early on. And he said, I think he's atheist, but desperately hoping to be agnostic, meaning hoping to have some belief system. And I sort of held true to that through the whole thing. So whenever anything supernatural was happening to him, he would always dispel it and go, this is not a real thing, even when he's being visited by a Patty. So when the whole theory, when he sort of became a messianic character, and this Bible was being written about him, I played it at least, this is horse shit, and I don't really want the attention of that. It's a kind of an alarming thing when people put any kind of unwanted projection on you. If I was to say, to you, I know you're kind of like this, and it's completely wrong. It's a frustrating feeling, it's sort of like someone saying you murdered someone and you didn't murder someone. You're like, the more you protest, the more crazy you seem, and more like you did it. So in that sense, I played it just like he never had it, but the pivot is at least when he's like, well, if we're going to go with this I can't die narrative, I am willing to be drowned to see if I can get to this other place to help you guys, and to meet Grace's children and to get the song and to talk to Evie and just see if they're there. So that still stays in the supernatural vein. Is Kevin dying? Is he just depriving himself of oxygen and going into a dream state, for whatever reason? But I think it's a place, I think that's what the bag on his head was, is that him sort of edging against death, the same way like a cutter would cut, or he's making the machinations of being suicidal, but he's not suicidal at all.
Or he's forcing himself to feel in a way that he hadn't before.
Yeah, exactly. Or he's doing it to feel something again. Like I want to feel that feeling because I felt alive. He says to Laurie at one point, like, I never felt more alive when I was in that place.
I still have so many questions.
So do I.
Oh boy. So we've actually already addressed some of these last questions, but I would love to know what will you miss most about this collaboration? How did it fill you in a way as a writer and an actor that you're taking it with you to the next project, and you've carried this leftover piece of yourself, what you learned. How are you kind of keeping this alive in yourself, what you've learned on the show?
I think it just exists, so it exists. So it's not like I have to sort of keep blowing on the coals of it to try and keep it alive. I think, I wouldn't want to. I'll carry the experience with me into everything, just like you carry any experience into everything. But as far as just reflecting on it, I was deeply appreciative the entire time we were doing it that I thought we were doing something that was pretty good, and really relished the making of it, because there's two ways of looking at doing any project, which is, I'm gonna really do this thing and I'll work hard on it because I hope when it comes out, pow, like everyone notices it and it's all cool. This was I'm of the opposite belief, which is when the making of the thing is the experience. That's the experience you're gonna have. The watching of it is a secondary experience where you get to see the talents of directors and score and all the rest of it. But it's a big lesson in just sort of, really enjoy it while it's happening, because when it's over, it's going to be over, and if you're still walking around 6 months later going, hey, remember the leftovers? Like, it's not going to be very rewarding,
Right. Hollywood has a short memory too.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's not even, it's just don't be obsessed with the reception and have more fun in the process. And this was one of those projects where we had a great bench of actors, we had a deep bench of directors, and I knew that we were in good hands with the writers, so I was going to enjoy it, and I did, and now it's over. So I'll take the experience with me, just in the that, what, boy, wasn't that fun, or I'd love to work with that person again, but I'm not going to try and drag it into the next experience, because I think it's so singular.
Right. And finally, what is a dream project that you would love to pursue that you haven't, either as a writer or an actor?
I mean, I have a couple ideas for some comedies that I'm working on, and one that's written that I would really love to produce. But I've never. It's not like I mean, there's people I'd love to work with, but I've never been able to plot or plan. It's like, I'd love to work with Sean Penn or De Niro. It's like, or whatever, Meryl Streep. I think when you kind of make those plans, it inevitably gets fucked up. So I've been very good at just kind of slipping on banana peels and lucking in, truly like lucking into stuff, and kind of just doing whatever the next thing is that feels right. I couldn't have anticipated this until I got sent the script, and I was like, oh, I really like that, and I didn't know if it was going to be any good or not, or I was going to be whatever. So I think it's a big, or at least it's not even advice. It's just kind of like, I always do what my gut tells me and what I really like doing. Because when I've tried to make smart decisions, like, oh, you should work with this director because that, I know it's a small part, but it's good, and it would be good because then if he did, then you could go. And whenever I've done that, I'm fucking miserable, because I'm like, oh, I don't even like this project. I don't want to do this. Like, I hate this.
So do you get advice from your team, and then you take it to heart, and then you sometimes kind of make your own decision?
I mean, I judge everything I get by my own taste, or the taste of a few people that I like, go like, what do you think of this? Or when I write something, I'll show it to people who I think are funny. I'm not going to show it to, every person who walks by and go like, because most people will have an idea that it's not, so right. you take it to the people you trust.
And I lied, one more question. Is there something that you wish you would have known about Hollywood before you started that you would offer as, not so much advice, but just some wisdom that you've gleaned over the years?
Nope. I don't.
You're still figuring it out.
I don't know. I'm still, I guess so. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it sounds so corny and like, oh, shucksy, but like, I really do believe in material. I really do believe in trying to be good at what you're doing. And I think if you just try, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that think like, like I should be doing this, and this is, I've always wanted to do, I mean, it's sort of those people, like, oh, you want to be, on the side of a bus. You don't want to be an actor. You want to be well known. You don't want to be an actor. And so the people that I've respect the most, friends of mine, some not friends of mine, are the ones who I think just always look for good material and always try and push themselves a little further than they're comfortable. I think comfort is death, like for anyone, whether you're a writer or director, anyone, it's like someone once told me, they said, I said, oh, what happened to the guy who directed Risky Business? And they said, I don't know where he is now. Said, oh, I think he kind of got caught in a wind, which means like, he kind of was like, and I did Risky Business, and he became, I don't think he progressed past that, and you've seen it. You can see it with a lot of people, where they sort of rest on previous work, and I don't think that's a good career plan?
Well, The Leftovers certainly gave a lot of insights and a lot of questions, which we'll be spending time thinking about for many years.
Good.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your
Thanks.
experiences. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.